Welcome back to the second video in this series, where we take a storyboard and turn it into a finished piece of animation. In our last video, we blocked in the key poses. If you haven't seen it, you can check it out up here. And in this video, we're going to finish off the animation. Once again, this video is sponsored by Wacom. They sent me their new Movink 13, and we're using that throughout the whole process and highlighting some of the cool features along the way. All right, let's jump into Toon Boom and finish off this shot. Right, so here are our key poses from last video. The first pose. And then our second pose is that recoil back. Now, if you look, I adjusted it a little bit. I added a new hand. I added some eyelids to kind of push the expression a little bit. I shrunk the head. So if you notice any changes that you want to make to your pose, try and do it before you start animating. Now let's think about how do we get from here to here. We need another pose to help define that movement and make it a little bit more interesting. That's called a breakdown pose. So I'm going to use these poses to help me create my new breakdown. We can work on our master layer. I'll make a keyframe, and you'll see that it just tweens from pose to pose. Pretty boring. Now what I want to do, I want to take one of these poses and kind of repurpose it. So I'm going to grab maybe our second pose and kind of just drag it to the middle. We can get rid of these tweens now, and you'll see I have a brand new pose that I can play with. So to make this interesting, I'm thinking about two principles here: anticipation and arcs. Before he comes up to this pose, I want to have him anticipate down to make that surprise more impactful. That's also going to help my character move in more of an arcing motion, which looks way more appealing than just kind of a straight line. So we can drop the head down, squash his face down. So the arms, I'm going to have them come up first before they go down, and then we can just connect the rest of our deformation pieces to kind of clean up the lines of our rig. Now we have something that looks like this. Right, and you'll notice compared to blocking out our key poses, that didn't take a lot of time at all. So we're defining that movement a little bit more. Things are loosening up a little bit, but everything still ends at the same time. So let's add a little bit of an overshoot after our action. And again, we're going to be using our poses to help us get that overshoot. I'll tween from my anticipation to my final pose. And then I'll grab one of these frames in the middle, and I'll just drag it 2, 4, 6, maybe 8 frames after my final position. So when we tween that and play it, it's not really what we want, right? It's too much movement. But let's grab something earlier on the timeline, like this frame, and we'll replace that final frame. Now you'll see the movement is much more subtle and closer to what we want. It's just this arm, so we can go into the arm layer. And now we drag the individual arm layer and replace our final keyframe. Right? That's a much more subtle movement at the end. The movements are kind of there, but the actual action itself looks very, very robotic. And that has to do with two things. We're missing our ease in and ease out, and we're missing some overlapping action, so the pieces of the body move at different times. So still working on our master layer, and with our master layer closed, let's just go into each keyframe and add some ease. And all that is at the beginning and ending of an action, things start slow, they speed up, and they slow down again. And all it does is correspond with the frame that I'm on, and we get to add our ease. So we could pull these handles to kind of slow things down or speed things up. I also like to use just the values as well. So let's put in a value of 35 and a value of 0. If we press apply, you'll see that our graph is curving. So we're slowing as we come out of frame 7. Let's go to the next one. Now we're on frame 11. As we anticipate down, I don't want to have any ease on this, so I'm just going to leave it. I want it to be a fast motion. Go to our next frame, frame 15. As we come into frame 15, I want to slow things down a little bit. So on my left, I'm going to do a factor of, let's say, 85. I press apply, and you'll see our graph curved again. It's slowed down. And now when we play this, things don't look as robotic. However, the problem is it's still moving a little bit too quickly. So let's add a little bit of cushion on the end of the action. This is a really neat trick, guys. So all we're doing is kind of extending the timing to make the ease a little bit stronger. So on my first frame, I'm going to go to frame 9, and I'll press a keyframe. Then I'll go to frame 8, and also keyframe. So those positions are locked in. Now, with the plus key on my keyboard, I can move everything to the right. So now it takes longer for him to actually come down. And let's do the same thing for our final frame. On frame 15 and frame 16, I'll drop a keyframe, and then we use our plus key to plus everything to the right. Now when we play this, our action is reading a lot better. I love that trick, just kind of cushioning the ends of your action. It really does make a big difference. So things are coming together. We're slowly loosening this action up. We need to add a little bit of overlapping action to make this character feel more alive. So up till this point, we've been working on a closed master layer. But now I'm going to start going into the individual pieces like the head, the arms, and I'm going to work on those layers. So for the head, what we're going to do is try and delay this action by a couple of frames. So as he comes down, I'm going to select my head and do that same plus trick that we learned before. So I plus by 2 frames to the right. And just like that, our head is a little bit delayed, which already loosens up this animation a lot. We can even start the head slightly earlier by adding a keyframe between our first and second pose and extending it backwards this time. This is adding a lot more weight, and it's loosening things up a little bit. Let's do the same thing on our front arm layer this time. This is going to be a little bit more involved because we might have to manually adjust the pose to kind of fit what we want. So as I go through, I'm seeing a couple of problems. The first is we need to change this hand drawing a little bit earlier because it kind of pops out of nowhere, and we don't want that. So let's move this up a couple of frames. Immediately it's in that right position. The next thing is if we look at the actual arcing motion, I kind of want it to be like this instead of like that. So we're going to need to foreshorten this arm a little bit. So move the hand over, move it forward in Z depth, and I can even make it a little bit bigger to kind of cheat this angle. So I can move the sleeve into a better position. You can even redraw different parts of this stage. Like for example, I want a different hand drawing. I can create a new drawing swap. Maybe just adjust my pose a little bit. Now our arc is a little more smooth. And finally, for our back arm, around frame 13, we can delay it by 2 frames. Now, all the pieces of this rig are moving at different times, and it's looking a lot better. The last kind of movement piece we could do is the shawl. So it's like cloth, so it kind of follows the body, which is why we save it for last. So we're on the collar layer. I want it to be a little bit delayed, so instead of having it finish on frame 16, I'm going to move it 2 frames up, and now we're going to get that overshoot in. So we kind of want the shawl to go up a little bit, just so we could see a little bit of the underside. Now our final pose, we're just going to have this resting a little bit more relaxed. Okay, so we have the overshoot, and it comes back down. Somewhere in the middle though, let's drag our cloth a little bit back. So it's going to hover in the air for a little bit. It doesn't have to be too noticeable. And then at the end, we're going to use our overshoot trick. So we'll drag this frame 2 for maybe 6 frames over. We'll add a keyframe. And then we'll take something even earlier and drag that and replace our final frame. So we get a more subtle overshoot. We can even ease in to our pose on frame 21. So we hold in the air, and then it falls down. Right, just a little bit delayed, and I'm liking that. Our animation is almost done, guys. We have lots of overlapping action. It's moving in arcs. It's looking really, really nice. The last thing we need to do is put everything on 2s. You'll see, like, if we go in on these even frames, so like frame 36, for example, you'll see there's some pieces that are not exactly lined up. You know, things are kind of breaking a little bit. So if we put it on 2s, we kind of delete half of those frames, and it still looks good. Easy way to do this is if we close our master peg, we select all these frames, and we press this button here. We want 2 to convert it to 2s and press OK. And there we go. The computer does its magic. You get rid of that keyframe. And now everything, it's a little more cleaned up. We still have to go in on some of these frames and kind of adjust things It's just the tiny details, and it's nothing too crazy at all. And that's it, guys. This is the final result. We put it on 2s. We adjusted all the little pieces, and it's looking pretty good. The timing's good. It's moving on arcs. And most importantly, it captures what the storyboard was trying to communicate. Obviously, this was more of a simple animation, but this is the exact same process I use for even more complex things. So thanks for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed this little video series we had going. It was a lot of fun to bring this guy from storyboard to finished animation. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. Yeah, have a good one. Once again, huge thank you to Wacom for sending me the Movink 13. It was really, really great to work on. Really looks like Wacom pulled out all the stops for this, and this is one of the best tablets that they have on the market, I think. The big highlights for me were how lightweight it is, the pen responsiveness, and even the touchscreen controls. That was a surprisingly useful feature. The smaller screen really didn't bug me at all. My workspace didn't feel crammed, and even when I was drawing, I still felt I could get some nice long brush strokes despite the small screen. I definitely recommend this tablet even if you're just starting out investing in your art career. It's a high quality tablet, a lot better than some of the other bargain tablets you can get nowadays. And in terms of Wacom products, under $1,000 is very, very cheap for something of this quality. So let me know in the comments what you think. Thanks again, guys, and I'll see everybody in the next video.